We'll even though we've maybe chosen a supplier for one particular part, as we get closer to production and excitement gets more around APTERA, we will have suppliers call us and say, "Hey, you're putting this part on the APTERA. We build a very similar part. I bet we could build it cheaper for you. Can we quote it?" And we'll get that quote, and if it's significantly lower and it has better quality, then yeah, we'll choose that supplier to put parts on our floor.
I think he's shooting himself in the foot there with the ones that he wants to get first. I think it's a silly thing to be saying at this stage.
As we get closer and closer to start of production, that list of potential will close. But it's amazing to see that we're 97% sourced now. We have 97% of the parts we need sourced. We know exactly where we're going to get it. We can go get it. It's just an effort now of maybe finding more cost efficient suppliers for some of these as we get closer to start of production. But closures complete, bink and exteriors complete, lighting, battery, solar complete. Interiors, we have some parts that the interior design was kind of lagging from the rest of the design, so there's still some parts. I think some of the center console stuff we haven't fully sourced out. Thermal, some of the thermal components were lagging as well. So we're still sourcing a couple of those things, and electromechanical devices in the EE team on the wiring harness still.
Did he just skip over powertrain? 100% sourced powertrain, so there's no reason why it couldn't have been added to that strategic partner slide, because the powertrain is really important to the vehicle. Without a powertrain, it goes nowhere, just like the one behind him. Nobody wants to buy one of those. There's this 100% sourced powertrain, and yet no strategic partner. We don't know if it's a Lafe or somebody else.
Have a little bit of work to do, but looking in very, very good shape with our partners to have all the pieces and parts here for the APTERA to get to production. Validation and testing. This is the fun part. We're getting closer to production. We're seeing production intent vehicle builds getting complete. Now we get to try to break them.
They're seeing them get complete. They got a body shell for PI1, and they don't know where the next one's going to get built at all. And the body shell for PI1 has spent 9 or 10 weeks going nowhere. And it's not in travel, but in completion. How can he say they're seeing them being built? They're doing nothing.
Now we get to put miles on the road. We get to have many people veering off of the freeway, while they're trying to take pictures of our testing vehicles driving around. So this is the fun stuff.
What a load of rubbish.
Really broken the validation plans out into 4 different areas: structural, electrical, driving, and testing. The structural is really the composites, the body structure. How pieces are moving under real world driving conditions. All of our body components are bonded together, so making sure all those bonds are durable through regular driving cycle and pave and shaker type testing. This will end up on a shaker jig. It's a computer aided platform that basically shakes the vehicle around just like you would over 150,000 miles of driving durability. Body sealing is part of structural too. The door seals and the how the windows are bonded on, the solar panels are bonded on and such. That's something that's important. You want to make sure that you have real longevity to those. Our solar panels are designed for 10 to 15 year service life. So everything that holds those solar panels on also has to last 10 to 15 years as well.
They really need to make sure that the sealing between all the metal parts, that's the roll cage and the chassis and the side protection bar in the door, all the metal parts everywhere are sealed against contact with the carbon fibre, because comments made by people who are in the know say that there is an absolute problem with any contact between carbon fibre and metals. I hope they get that right.
On the electrical side, we've got several big areas and because we control most of that, we'll have to go through a lot of testing and validation for those. But on the powertrain, the high voltage, the low voltage side, you're testing, that connectors are holding together through full durability, 150,000 miles, shaking, bumping, rubbing, those types of things. Low voltage, same thing, wire routing and making sure, everything's holding together over the long term. The driving cycle, that's, ride and handling, making sure, that the compliance and the suspension is good, making sure, that things feel the way they should, especially act in the way our simulation said they should act, and braking performance. Braking's a big one because, obviously you have to stop, but there's a lot of safety characteristics, automatic emergency braking and other stuff that have to be calibrated through your brake testing. Our general road testing, impact test, safety test, noise, vibration, harshness test, all those are kind of long-term tests. So as soon as we have, completed vehicles, we'll start just putting miles on those vehicles. So, we hope to have, somewhere near a million miles of testing on these vehicles before we start to hand them to anybody. But did we go through each slide?
Oh, I just went to it because you were talking about it.
Oh, I didn't know we broke that out to another slide.
Yeah.
But overall, some of these things have to play out in series, not in parallel. A lot of these tests can be done in parallel, but on the driving, the ride and handling side, we really have to have the suspension tuning and the shocks and the dampening all complete before we do the braking test. Because if you don't have your suspension fully tuned, then you go to do some testing on the brakes, it won't correlate. You can't go back and change some of the suspension and then redo the braking test. You got to finish the suspension and then do the braking, and you have to do the suspension and the braking before you do the crash testing, so they impact.
This is interesting because he's saying that you have to complete the suspension before you do a brake test. Otherwise, you have to redo the brake test. It's a waste of effort. Now, I understand that. Makes sense. What doesn't make sense is that a year ago, they did brake testing at Chackwalla. So if they did brake testing at Chackwalla, why did they send the Beta more recently to Italy to have suspension testing again? And why aren't they saying we need to redo the brake testing because we reverted to having the suspension altered a bit? It's very common for Chris Anthony to say things and not do what he says because he's just a palaverer. He's a snake oil salesman. He tells the gullible who don't think past their nose. And he has this thing about him that he thinks he can say anything to anyone and they are obliged to believe him. It's, to me, almost pathological in a way. This whole notion that he can say something and you've got to believe it just because he said it. And here's just one more anomaly that I have found dozens and dozens of times over since I first saw APTERA on YouTube. This one here where, yes, we did the suspension test at Chuckwalla. We got it sorted. So we did the brake tests. It's all sorted. And now we're talking more than a year later when they're supposed to be up to the Delta production phase, so close to it that he's going on about, well, we redid the suspension tests, and as far as I can tell, I don't think they're going to do anything about restarting braking testing at all. Everything is just so sloppy.
Each other. So some of these things kind of have to run in series and not in parallel. So I think it'll be interesting to be able to share the information from these tests as they happen, but just keep in mind that some things are just going to take time because you have to finish one segment of testing before you can start the next segment of testing. We'll be doing a lot of accelerated life cycle testing, fatigue testing, environmental testing, load testing, really the durability testing that will hopefully help you be assured that your APTERA is going to be super durable and have great longevity. We can put 1 million miles on the vehicle, but it's a lot of the load testing and environmental testing and fatigue testing that will show things that may be very corner case failures, but we'd love to know now so we can take corrective action.
Well, I think I'll try to start again some other time when it comes to recording because I'm feeling a bit fatigued at the moment. I think this seminar has been very testing for me. So I'll see what I can make of this confidential tongue-in-cheek webinar thus far. Maybe get something out before the cretin and Hillbilly Bill and an engineer and 5 or 6 others, Motor Mouth, all of these start putting out the praises, give people something to compare. Now, I've just spoken off the top of my head so far, but comments are welcome in my videos, and I am happy to discuss anything that any fanboy or anybody thinks I have not substantiated enough. Just ask me for the evidence, and I'll give you as much as I can. Well, that's it for, I don't know, maybe I think I might be able to get this in one. So, yes, that's it for part 1. Bye for now. Stay safe.